Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to the Flowstate. I was super excited today to be filming again in person. It's been a long time, and we wanted to bring to you a conversation which is something we haven't really touched upon in recent times, and it's very much a lot to do with a particular angle which we have been focusing on for the last many years as a team. And today we get the opportunity to bring it out. Just before we dive into today's conversation, I want to remind our listeners of an ever-evolving definition of the flow state, which we as a team keep thinking about every now and then. And this time, the definition sounds something like this. Pardon me, I'm going to be using a paper because it is really well thought of and I cannot be missing any words. So the flow state, with the two words, essentially implies that it is a bank of perpetual flow of unrestricted, organic movement of thought generated from lived experiences of guest speakers and hosts. So we're all designers on our team, and the point here is that as designers, we have a perception that we like to bring out to the rest of the world, which is technically our audience. We like to assume the world is listening, but that's us. To proceed with the definition, we also believe that it is the currency that we are basically talking about. We call flow state a bank, essentially, and the currency which is flowing in this bank is the intuitive or the interpreted knowledge, right? So it's technically all of the facts that we talk about, the journey, all the learnings that we can take from one another becomes the currency of exchange, and they act. This set of knowledge essentially acts as the guiding star for our listeners at various stages in their lives. Now, it doesn't have to be that you're a designer or a maker. You can be anybody trying to do anything, even looking for a job for that matter, or be trying to help, or be helping your mum cook a meal, something as simple as that. But the essence of this conversation is to help you to overcome hurdles, to make decisions, plan your dream journey, or even understand yourself, which is super important. What do you think?
It's not small.
No, it is. And with that, I have to introduce our guest for the afternoon. A gloomy afternoon in London. But it's something we did not anticipate, did we?
No, of course.
So we have with us today Valerie, the founder of Ethos of London. Well, a growing platform that curates the ethos of London. And I'll let Valerie elaborate on this as we proceed. But before we get into that, I want the audience to get a little bit of a gist of what we're going to be talking about. Essentially what's happening today is that you're talking to a designer maker, which is myself. I represent my two houses of luxury product manufacturing and retailing. One is Surat Jewels, wherein, well, pretty much clearly we do jewels. We create fine and high jewelry objects, of which some of the pieces are very carefully curated by Valerie on her platform. So the overarching theme for today is that we're talking to a maker and a curator of luxury, essentially. And well, there will be a lot that we will touch upon, and hopefully it will be a good learning experience for everybody. Let's get started, Valerie. If you'd like to introduce yourself, just for the audience, a tiny bit, and then we dive into establishing the flow.
Wonderful. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here today. It's very exciting to be talking to you in a slightly more formal context than usual. So a little bit of background about me. I set up Ethos of London in 2020, 2021, which retails some of the best fine jewelry brand internationally. I mean, we can define what best means a bit later in the conversation, but the most sort of innovative, exciting and creative brand that I that I see. I've been living in London for many years. Originally grew up in Paris and moved to the UK when I was 18 years old. So I've had a trajectory of studies who started in Paris in France and then carried on here in England.
Well, that's super important to know because, I personally feel that a person's development really takes place when they move from one place to the other. And I'll give you an example from my journey. Just a little bit. I'm always sort of excited to tell everybody about this thing, and it's so nice to hear that a lot of the journeys actually begin with oneself leaving their comfort zone, which is literally where they grew up. It could be your family, it could be your school. Sort of a cocoon is built, and you break free from that, and you enter a whole world of reality. I think you get thrown into a sea of sharks, and suddenly you're trying to figure out how to hunt them down. So I think that's really important to know that it was at 18, because at 18 is when I moved from Jaipur to Bombay. And I was quite rebellious as a maker. I think we all need to have that as makers. We were, most of my friends, even the team at Flowstate, I think we're all super rebellious. I can talk for myself, and my it's sort of growing up. I was always on the stage doing things like playing the guitar, doing debates, doing the Model United Nations and all of those things, and playing football and all of those things. I was average at academia. But I was all right. I mean, as in when the call would be picked up to be sort of be answering academics, it was all right. I mean, hopefully I made my parents proud. But
I'm sure you did.
No, but all of that I felt when I moved to Bombay in 2016 was sort of such a tiny world. I mean, we were all there in the newspaper when we scored goals or we got good grades and all of those things. But I think all of that sort of changed when I moved from this very comfortable family life to Bombay, which is, I have to say, the definition of that city is utter chaos. There is no city, and take it from me, no matter where you're listening to this from today, there is no city on this planet that will ever be as chaotic as Bombay, and yet, unrealistically calm in its own way. So I grew up in Bombay, essentially. I hail from a family of artistic people, which I did not realize, all of what I took for granted. Things like my father sort of inheriting a house that manufactured or sort of crafted rugs for so many people globally. It was something that I never really realized growing up in that sheltered space of mine, because I was perhaps my parents were trying to give me a life and sort of get my voice be sort of heard. So for me, all of that was really business.
Of course, I think you always need a bit of a distance somehow, to then sort of appreciate and sort of have a hindsight on your environment and
right.
surrounding. Yeah.
Right. How was that for you? Sort of leaving your home and then suddenly being in London.
So, I mean, I grew up in a fairly sort of leafy, comfortable suburb of Paris. And obviously when I moved to the UK, I moved to Manchester, which is the north of England. So like you, a very different environment. In Paris, I studied semiotics at La Sorbonne University. So that was sort of definitely, I think, a great grounding for everything that followed through in terms of art and kind of visual arts. Semiotics is sort of a science of sign, and there's it's sort of very philosophical but technical at the same time. So that was sort of the base, I would say, in France. And then in terms of the family environment, my first exposure to luxury was through artworks. So my mum used to take me to museums since I was little, 10, 11, 12. going to see Impressionist painting, going to the Louvre, going to all this beautiful gallery in Paris. And I think my first introduction of experience of luxury was those moments where you sort of face with an artwork and, the talking about environment, the museum environment is very, very grand, it's very quiet, it's very calm. And so you have this sense of kind of rarity and kind of preciousness that come out from the work. So I think those sort of feeling and those emotion came through there for me. And like you, I was completely unaware of that at the time. You just go through the motion and, so I would say, in terms of my growing up, the sort of city cultural life of Paris, and then the sort of academic background in semiotics was sort of the start of my journey into art and luxury, probably. And then Manchester was, oh my God, that was a very different. I think that taught me. Obviously, I didn't just move to the UK and said goodbye and said, oh, I'm off, I'm not coming back. No, it was meant to be 2 months, which turned into a year, which was a gap year. And then the gap year turned into 4 years, and then it turned into 20 plus year, probably 30 by now. So yeah, wow. So I effectively ended up making a life in the UK, but it wasn't planned, right. It sort of evolved in this way. And yeah, Manchester was a very creative city around music. So, a lot of, but it was certainly a baptism of fire with, language, we talked about, cultural adaptation for sure.
Right. No, that's interesting because, the fact that you mentioned that it was art that opened the ground for luxury for you, as a perception, it would be so understated to always go back to sort of understand what got a person interested in what they really do. And specifically what you do is, let's say it's trading luxury, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I think a friend of mine said that they describe me as a sharer of beautiful things.
I like that. It's better than trader for sure.
I like it.
I definitely prefer that over trader. The part of the world that I grew up in, sadly because of industrialization, we essentially call a lot of things.
Trade is a beautiful thing. It is a trade. Yes.
It's. I don't know. From the perspective of slow making and all of those things, I think it becomes contrasting to be using these words like that, and specifically because my inclinations towards luxury weren't even identified. I had no idea that what I was delivering was luxury. I trained to be a designer. I was initially working on software products, so it was definitely not luxury, but it was in a different way for timekeeping and things like that. And started designing kitchen appliances, healthcare products, and all of those things. And suddenly, there I was when COVID hit, back at home, trying to identify who I am as a person. What am I made of? And in that, I found the answer that I am a creator of what was technically things I inherit. It's literally essentially about growing up with objects, just stuff like the carpet that's underneath our feet right now are things that I sort of understood were the wool and the silk of my being.
Quite literally and metaphorically, right? Yeah,
literally, and then the other bit was sort of understanding how do I take this forward. Just what my family had been doing for the longest time, how I sort of understand what they do, how I understand the people that they work with, how I understand the perception of essentially at the end of the day this being a product, how I literally empathize is the word. As a designer, I was technically empathizing with myself and so many other stakeholders in this process. And I think academia helped me a lot that way. And how you mentioned...
When did you study? Because you studied in Mumbai, but you studied in London as well. So
yes,
what was the...
Yes.
What sort of time?
Yeah, so the timeline is something like this. Schooling ended for me in 2016. This is 12th grade. And I moved to Bombay in 2016 to pursue product design. For 4 years. I was there in Mumbai, and then I moved for my first job, which I had to leave because COVID hit. So I moved from Bombay to Bangalore. Initially growing up was Jaipur. Then we went to Bombay. Then we went to Bangalore. And then, to be politically correct, I very happily escaped. Even though the world was in turmoil, I was back home. That particular year of COVID, I was actually supposed to come to England to pursue my master's in service design, which I had to defer from. And I'm sort of grateful. Of course, we lost a lot of family that particular year, but it was really tough times. It was a time to sort of also reflect, understand who you really are. What are you going to do with life? Are things ever going to go back to being normal? A new definition for that has come up. The world was
Did you not
changing.
study in London at all, though?
No, I did. So I deferred the year of COVID, and I came the year after.
Okay.
So that year I was at UAL in 21, and this is... That's when I was actually exposed to a lot of cultural differences. Now, I come from a part of the world where no is not an answer, where timelines are set in a way that if somebody's anticipating an answer from you and they're saying, take your time, they're basically saying, come back to me by tomorrow morning. The unsaid things of cultural being, they completely changed. The way we move, the way we sort of think sometimes, how we interpret questions, specifically the English language, how they use it here, and how we used it back there. I think a lot changed. But my aim coming to England was very simple. I wanted to understand the people. I wanted to understand my history because a lot of it exists here. Yeah. And there is literally every building that I'm looking at talks about historical importance of something that possibly my ancestors touched. So,
and I think obviously heritage and legacy is a big part of Surat Jewels, which which I am drawn to, and I appreciate so much, because effectively, you've explained how you grew up in this extremely creative family, so doing both carpet and high jewelry, but obviously not having this kind of awareness that you were surrounded by creation until a bit later on. And then effectively with Surat Jewels, what you're doing is revisiting that sort of family legacy with a contemporary contemporary take on it. So it's quite interesting that, even you're kind of also looking at London in that way. How does London bring the legacy of your heritage and your country back to you, how that's reflected in both places in some ways. And you obviously translate that into your work as well, which is quite beautiful. We can talk about collection, but that your Keys collection is inspired by Westminster Abbey, and this incredible necklace and suite here is inspired by you should be talking about this, not me, but my understanding is this beautiful kind of Art Deco inspired necklace earring ring is inspired by by Mumbai, right? Yes. The harbour,
the Marine Drive,
yeah,
Back Bay.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's this heritage just sort of filters through everything, all of your creation really on storytelling, which is effectively what luxury is all about.
I like the fact that you've mentioned storytelling and what luxury is about, which essentially brings me to a pivotal point in this conversation, because we've sort of understood how we got to London, the two of us, and what academic.
Well, even though who knows really how, this sort of magnetic force just got us here.
Well, that is a conversation. It's something like the inside of a gemstone, they say, in our trade, it's very, very, very much easily said, interpreted and understood that a stone is mined out of the surface of the earth. But before it is sort of pulled out, it has chosen where it is going to be. Yeah. So the earth is far more powerful than whatever you and I can actually think. I don't know why these stones are sitting here, why they chose me to put them there, and why they have all decided to come to London. It's up to them. They have life inside. But that is most certainly a conversation for another day. But I would like to touch upon the element that you spoke about storytelling and contemporary being the two words, which are, I think, so important and so often overlooked. Let's start with what you think about contemporary, for that matter, and then we take a deep dive into storytelling.
Contemporary. Maybe I can start with how I see luxury, and which will tie into it. So for me, luxury is really about embracing kind of soulful ways of expression. It's about kind of refining, owning, and expressing your voice. It's with what you do, it's what you wear, and it's also with all the objects that you surround yourself with, right? So that can be incredible jewelry, it can be interior design, it can be inspiring artworks.
Yeah.
So for me, luxury is really creating this environment that sort of nourishes your soul with objects and experiences that achieve that for you. So the idea of the contemporary coming into the mixed, it's contemporary is what is authentic to you right now. It's sort of the voice. How do you want to present yourself in the world? How do you want to exist in the world, and what does a brand, what message do brands convey in the present moment in the world today? So that's contemporary. So and the interesting combination and the interesting inflexing point for luxury is really that combination of legacy and modernity, and sort of blending tradition with the world today. So there is the incredible heritage that we have in cultures and artistry and all the knowledge that we've acquired, but then obviously making that relevant to life today. So that's what contemporary means to me.
That's interesting. I was thinking, I always try to define things, and we all do at Flowstate, essentially. The importance of Flowstate was to be defining things, to literally just pick up a topic and be defining it, things like what is contemporary, or something as sort of remarkably far away as what is space. Space is right here, this is space, or one could interpret space to be what NASA looks at. We could send cameras and satellites either inside or outside, microscopic or telescopic. We essentially have been defining things by the means of this conversation. And I think I represent the whole team, everybody in this team. When I define contemporary for us, I think it is today's voice. And I think it's as simple as that. Just 2 words, today's voice. And then voice can be defined. Today can be defined over and over again. And I think that's what is contemporary. It's an ever changing. Today is contemporary, yesterday is not.
Yeah.
What I designed yesterday on a piece of paper for a client is not contemporary today. It is something I did yesterday.
It's an evolution.
Definitely. And I think that is what I think becomes a very, very important part of storytelling, which is the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about. And how both of them actually structure to become 2 very important pillars in the definition of luxury overall. Specifically in our times, we've seen nations go at each other. We're politically all over the place. Economically, the world is in its own situation where it is, and it's about being relevant every day and still be delivering that particular aspect of luxury. So my next question comes to you from all of these thoughts in hindsight. What is your perception of storytelling, or how important do you think storytelling as an element is?
Well, storytelling is everything. It's a combination of emotion and values, which is really what we're sort of here to enjoy and express. So it's core to it's core to how we live, fulfilled life. So I think we've just talked about culture from different culture, and so I think storytelling is what I'm trying to find the best way to describe it. It's imagination. It's world that we can both create them and discover them. So I think it's the sort of dynamism, the dynamic between kind of receiving and creating at the same time. So so for example, bringing it back to jewelry, storytelling gives you a sense of place, a sense of time to create a relationship with the object that you're looking at, and make it personal to you, to your story.
That's super.
So I think the ideal kind of synergy really is when you have the story of the jewelry, the story of the jewel, the story of the designer, your story with this piece, kind of merge with the story of the collector and the client, and it's kind of this kind of combination of giving and receiving through that precious object, right? So you've created the piece with a particular narrative, a particular imagination, a particular experience which is your own, and then you pass it on to someone else who will make it their own and create their own stories, with that piece as well, on their memories.
It's fascinating that you say that, because it reminds me of all the people that I've ever collected. That's what I like to say. Ever not purchased, ever collected something that I have made. And something that sort of they've resonated with, and trust me, we've had statements coming from across the table. These are you understand how sales happen. How people come, they see things, they like something, they'll pick it up. But there's always something that they're saying, and I think that is such precious data in there, that you're able to understand the people that you're essentially, at the end of the day, you're working for them. If they are the people who are picking your things up, your job is to be delivering to them, right? It's bread and butter, and it would be wise for anybody to sort of understand that in today's time, because it's in their statements they leave their personality with you. And I understood this when I sold the first version. Actually, this is the second version of the Queen's necklace that we've done with permission, of course, of the client. The first version, when it was presented in Bombay to this woman who, beautiful woman who is a resident in that particular neighborhood, she saw the first, the Queen's necklace that we had done. It was with beautiful emeralds and all of those things. And I was talking at that time, I was basically telling her the stories the way I do. So I was essentially doing my storytelling without really having the intent of doing storytelling. I was just telling her my thought. And she literally said, I had no idea that I grew up in a neighborhood which is so historically important. So I was just throwing facts on the table about things like Bombay was built in this period, the architectural style was Art Deco. Yeah. Why was it Art Deco? Who were the makers, the architects? What was the masonry involved, the materials and all of those things? And I thought that I'm actually sort of overthrowing. I was throwing a lot of information which somebody might not be interested in listening, and that's where you need to also be sort of aware of the room, I think. But
I think to go back to storytelling and luxury as a whole, I think there's really a key element to all of this, which is also, I think luxury is it's a state of creativity, it's a state of mind. It's the idea of going back to that sort of childlike mind, that sort of playful state, that sort of freedom, and it is a creative state, right. Because I think a lot of us, we spend a lot of time trying to kind of fit to particular rules or structures or in an environment, for obvious reason, usually to sort of fit in or comply, or and that's not always relevant to our authentic self effectively. And so I think luxury jewelry, art design, is definitely that sort of creative outlet where you can find yourself, you can find that voice, you can find that joy, that excitement and that playfulness, which should be and should feel authentic to you. So both in you creating it, but to go back to your experience meeting with a client, with the storytelling and Mumbai. So, I think where magic happens is where you tell a story that is authentic to you. And, whether or not the client may or may not be interested, but, the chemistry will happen is exactly, when that authenticity is shared and sort of the interest is shared in your story, in the passion that you have for the piece, right? So. So I think there's definitely I think what I'm trying to say is that it can't be calculated. You just have to be authentic and playful with what you do. And if people like it, then that's fantastic. And if they don't, then that's fine. So, and I think, luxury definitely is, part is that authentic voice in receiving and in expressing. Yeah.
Now that's super valuable, I think, for everybody. But I think we've come down to a very specific core point, and this actually would benefit from actually pulling back in time just a little bit, and to also understand from the nature of what you have been doing over the last few years, setting up Ethos of London as your, let's call it your child in the making. What was it that made you do it? Because I think it's really important for one to understand, I do this, but why? People are always curious about why do you do this?
Yeah, why did I do this? I think a mixture of, passion and curiosity for art and design in general, for crystals and gemstones for sure. And I think... So I have a 10 years plus background in career in art, working with art galleries in all kind of different positions, from gallery administration to curating to writing to ultimately sales. So I definitely have quite a sort of strong retail background. Galleries effectively, are retail spaces and also open to the public, and so you have to kind of greet and speak to a whole range of clients and people, which shape characters.
No, of course.
Sorry, I actually forgot how did I get to so. So we, having a background in retail, galleries, and on art, I think the passion for art and design, the gemstone. I think jewelry was sort of a like an obvious choice, really, because it's this beautiful object which is art and design led in my mind, but also has a sense of. Has the gem, has the grounding. I think gemstone have something very, very grounding to them. It brings you in the present moment. It's from the earth. It has this sort of bizarre practicality and grounding to them, whilst also being completely fabulous and spectacular. Yeah. And ultimately, what drove me to create Ethos of London was the desire to create a platform that was curated and that offered an artistic creation for clients. I think a lot of what's available out there, there's many stores and brands online and offline who don't necessarily curate with a focus on artistry and quality. So I wanted to create that safe place where if you want to shop and if you want to find a beautiful, soulful piece of jewelry, you didn't have to worry that you were picking the wrong piece on the platform, right? You just have an understanding that the ethos and the philosophy goes across the board of everything that's being showcased and presented to you, rooted in artistry. Yeah. I have a bit of hesitation to talk about craft because I think craft can be perceived as purely skills, so making skills, which it absolutely is. But for me, craft is also is when skill are met with vision. So when you have the skills to execute, but the artistic vision to create. So the meeting of artistic vision and mastery of craft is what makes craft for me. So the two have to be present. So actually that's definitely one of the things that I look for in the designers that I work with, the sort of creating vision and then the execution of that coming together. So yes, Ethos of London came from a desire to cater to a clientele looking for artistry, and also a desire to promote and showcase incredible talents in design. Yeah.
It's interesting that you talk about talent, craft and art. Essentially, a lot of people would think they're synonyms. But you talk about them individually, which I think is so important in today's time. There is such a fine line between what is art and what is craft that we all forget. And I think I have to, by obligation and not as a human at the end of the day, sort of appreciate that no artist, and I really mean it, is working as an individual. There is nobody out there. And you could be painting, but somebody crafted a paint. You could be again painting. Somebody made the canvas. So it's never ever just the person and their thought. And there's so many people that enable your art and your vision at the end of the day.
Yes, the material, the making, so everything coming together, yes.
And I think there's a huge importance that one needs to throw in that. And from a curator's perspective, and I represent the whole maker community when I ask this question, from a curator's perspective that you've established with Ethos of London, how beautifully you find your things, and I'm privileged to be on your platform that way. And what is it that you're... are you really looking for these elements in a sort of format? Do you have like a structured format that you're sort of following when you're looking at people's work?
No, absolutely not. I mean, whilst I'm on the curating and sort of sales and retail side of the element, I'm also quite creative at my core. You know, I've had my years of doing photographies and playing with a few things myself. So structure is not my strong suit. And so, but I think the flip side of that is my strength is probably more in sort of intuition, connection, passion, which are all the things that I connect with the brands that I represent. So what do I look for? Yes, I look for expertise and passion for what they do, and a vision for what they're trying to achieve. So a clear vision in what they, what they do. I mean, I think let's talk about you in this sense. So I think pretty soon after we met, I think you showed me this incredible hand painted, hand drawn, hand painted drawings and sketches of all the collection that you create, know. So that for me is such a beautiful, special, soulful part of your practice. So all of those elements are the things that I'm quote unquote looking for. So I know that you keep sketchbooks. I mean, you have different things. You have sketchbooks on the go, and then you actually have kind of commission sketches of pieces of jewelry. And I think you're drawing out effectively nearly as spectacular as the jewelry itself, really. Do you sometimes give some of the sketches, or do the client request those sketches when you...
Always.
Yes.
Every time I do a commission piece, or not, even if someone's buying, say, a piece online, for that matter, and we make it a point that the original drawing and the thought behind the piece, because I don't know if you remember, but most of my work is actually sort of inspired from poetry. So I'm literally translating poetry into jewelry. So I send the original text, the elaborate explanation, because sometimes the poetry can be in Hindi/Urdu, something like that. I mean, words picked up from both languages, and this sort of helps me trigger a ongoing conversation with the people who collect. And it's so nice to also, sometimes when I send these things, the drawings, the text and all those things, it's so nice that people sometimes revert in the form of poetry, because there is a creative mind within everybody. And I remember sending this piece to a client in Dubai, and they came back to me with a poetry which is in response to the poetry that I'd written. And it was so fascinating that I replied to them over a text with poetry again. So it's a whole WhatsApp in response.
And then which resulted in a jewel, right?
It did again. Yeah. So it became, it is an ongoing conversation between the two of us. And it's interesting that one can actually stumble upon things like that without having any intent, without having any force.
That's the dream client, let me tell you.
Now that you say that, my question is about clientele. My question is essentially about a clientele now. We've established pretty much. I don't know if we should be touching on more things with this, but I think we've established a lot about the importance and the relevance of. What is the importance of storytelling? Who is contemporary, or what is contemporary?
What I do want to add, though, as well with Ethos of London in terms of luxury and curating, even though obviously my personal take comes into it, I'm not aiming to dictate style. Style is an individual. Individual to the client and to the collectors. It's really more around values and ethics. So the value of creativity, the value of passion, the value of care and attention to detail, the legacy, the artistry. So all of those values is what drives the curation. It's not the style of the product. So that's quite an important distinction to make. I mean, and even, I would say even as a designer, you would create, we're surrounded here by incredible sort of high jewelry pieces, but you create a range of style, and, there's obviously jewelry that is more day-to-day wear, there's jewelry that is more sort of gala pieces. So I think the conversation is less about styles and more about values and on ethics,
No, that's important, and it's great that you're saying that. I will have to come back to this bit just briefly, because it's I've got to follow up on that. When you say things about value and style, and it not being selected because it is a particular style, are you also sort of throwing light on trends?
Yes, trends are. Trends. I tend to discover trends. I'm the last to know about trends, and I usually read about them in some magazine when it's the 5th or the 10th article they've published about it. So I'm not really clued into trends. It's not. I think trends evolve. There's trendsetter, right? Where does the trend come from? So the trend evolved from creative mind or practices that we talked about contemporary. I think it's trend often are to do with the zeitgeist of the time, right? So trends are already, they're an afterthought of what's already been happening for a little while.
No, of course.
So trends are related to the sort of contemporary world, what is relevant today. However, with what you and I are doing, we're looking at timelessness in the pieces we create. We want things to last, to be still be there in 100 years, 200 years time. So there's some sort of cultural legacy that's present with that piece. Similar to when you go and see something in a museum, and client can create this cultural legacy within their home, within their jewelry drawer, so that's the idea of kind of creating this kind of cultural legacy that you surround yourself with. And you want that to last, you want that to be your legacy, right? Or part of your legacy. I feel like I've strayed quite far away from the question.
No, you're pretty much there.
So I think the trends, I guess they are they can be a part of what's being made, but I think what you create can inadvertently follow trend because you're attuned to the zeitgeist, but I don't think you should create something to follow a trend, if that makes sense.
That's the tricky bit. That's the tricky bit. I don't know how to be trending if you ask.
Just to be trending, yeah, exactly.
I mean, in the world that we live in, I think it's become so categorically about being relevant by what is trending on social media or not. I choose not to be. I choose not to be on that side of the thesis. I mean, I think I'm antithesis.
Yeah.
From that perspective.
What is trending? Yes,
I wish I knew. I wish I knew. I'm not.
Well, I'll tell you what is trending. This is a big conversation. Colored diamond.
Oh, right.
but they're trending at quite a few million. So yeah. But I mean, I would say that it's sort of it goes beyond trend, right? This is also, I think, obviously when you read magazines and an article newspaper, they will say, they will talk about some of those changes in terms of trends, let's say, but I think it can also reflect a change of understanding of an industry. So there's and also breaking rules and boundaries. Every industry have their own set of rules of what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. So things like seeing a lot more colored gemstone being used in jewelry, precious and semi-precious, seeing colored diamond reaching extremely high prices due to their rarity, as they should. They're very precious, rare, incredible gems. But I think the reason that this is kind of taking, kind of emerging, so to speak, is because some of the rules and regulation are being broken apart, and that can be applied to jewelry. I'm sure it can be applied to art for sure. What the contemporary art market today is completely different to what it was in the 19th century, or So as rules and structure are broken apart, there's also that element of change, and I guess trends are a part of that flow. So maybe we should be kinder to trend.
No, of course. I mean, there was a point when Renaissance as a movement was trending, but we spoke about it much later when we started documenting things and started labeling things and started calling them, that period was Renaissance, or this period was not, or this is Art Deco and that's not. Modernism, all those things. I mean, minimalism, all of those things came in the picture. But I think this brings me to a very, very important aspect of what can be defined as luxury. And you used the word very specifically, precious, and you sort of detailed it out with colored diamonds. But where do you think the word precious really sort of makes its home in a person's mind?
So, going back to having your own unique voice, I think precious is something you have to define for yourself. I don't think that should be dictated by anybody else. But for me, precious, has to be it goes back to emotion and quality of experience, and carving that sort of time and sort of high emotion for yourself. Precious can be, precious often goes with rarity, and not just for the fact that it's rare, but for the fact that, we all have unique personality, unique voices, and so you want that thing to be as personable as possible to you, so it's either you creating and weaving a story around a particular object that sort of gives it that sort of treasure, the sort of preciousness, or the object having an inherent quality that is extremely rare and precious. So it can go both ways, I mean, you could buy something and then just make it extremely precious to you with the the significance that it holds for you. But you know, I think definitely let's speak a little bit about sort of this notion of artistry and quality, because I do think preciousness has something to do with quality like care, love, soulfulness, attention to detail, passion, you know. So when something is made, you know, having all of those elements and all of those qualities are part of luxury and what makes something precious, I think, to me.
It was remarkable that until 2 years ago, I used to think that my imposition of the fact that I am the only perhaps maker of jewelry who translates poetry into jewelry already makes me precious. And I was shown the reality in a reflective glass, and literally the first time that I got my pieces out. And it was so fascinating to actually see that there were a few people in the room who were absolutely blatantly not interested in the poetry. For them, they were precious things, but because of the size of the stone. And it's so interesting to sort of have a perception of not just the maker or the person who brings it about to a platform. I think it becomes so important to be sort of also relevant to people who are going to look at these things. I mean, in our heads, we can build up such pretty worlds, and we can take them out, and you know, there will be people who will resonate with you. Like billions of people on this planet, at least one person is going to understand what you're saying. But I think it's
don't get me wrong. I mean, there's definitely, you know, as I said, the quality and the emotion. You know, I mean, all this positive emotion go with a lot of resources and quality as well. You know, they go hand in hand. So, but it's interesting you talk about the size of the stone, and you thought that they looked at it as more precious because they were larger gems.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's super fascinating. But it's I often say this terminology out loud, and I often say we live in a funny world.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Yeah, in sort of, I think, you know, I think part of this as well is you know, the way I read that is when people get impressed by something. So you get that wow, and you get impressed. Sometimes partly because perhaps there isn't a wide knowledge about something in particular. So I think the more you can accumulate knowledge, the more discernment you have as well.
Absolutely.
As to what is precious and what is less precious. So I think discernment has to be part of that, and you know, that's something that again, you know, one has to build for oneself, which is why the beginner said precious. You have to define that for you, right? So, but you know, size can be part of it.
I mean, of course, if you're talking about a 14 carat gemstone, it's
like emerald and or emerald or something, Colombian emerald,
No, of course.
But yeah, I think you know, I do feel that it is a definition that people have to create. That's probably not very helpful at all, but it's
Well, that brings us to a very interesting point in this conversation. Now that we've by the means of the Flowstate model, we have diverged, I believe. We have diverged enough to understand or give an understanding to our listeners about what is the perception of a maker towards firstly having a journey and then having a voice, and how we define the people or the market. But I think this brings us to the next point, which is about understanding the people we're designing for. So just if we were to very quickly define by the means of how you defined your audience for Ethos of London. I know that there are different kind of people that we work with. There's not a very singular definition to it. But we do have an inclination. You know, like when I'm sketching, I usually always have a person in mind.
Interesting.
I mean, I'm already thinking of that one particular client.
Is it an imaginary client or is it a real?
Sometimes they're imaginary, but there are sort of real clients that I sometimes sketch for, and I'm like, well, I've drawn this as per her chin or her eyes, or let's say even if it's a carpet, I've actually sort of imagined this particular rug changing the particular rug they have, which they haven't bothered changing for a very long time. So it's all of those things. But for you, what is the sort of luxury, let's say luxury client, because we deal in luxury products. What is the luxury client in 2025?
I will answer that in a minute, but I want to go back to your mentioning of imagining the wearer, the client. So how does that influence the piece you create, or is the piece you want to create influencing the client you imagine? Like how does that work?
Well, when I apply it in real life, we usually start building together. So it gives me a good starting point.
Well, if you already have some, but not in the situation where you already have the client. Let's just say you're creating a collection from scratch. Do you have a particular, figure in mind, or a particular, and does that help the design? Does that inform the design that you make?
I wish I could pull up some of the drawings. I usually start from the silhouette of the person,
right?
And from a very zoomed out perspective, what that piece would look like. Where is this person wearing it?
With a particular clothing, particular. Yeah.
Sometimes I end up drawing imaginary outfits, and I stumble upon looking at them in real life. Sometimes that's interesting because we're relevant because we're looking at things all day long. We can't help but create what we've already seen, just in a different way. We're human. Invention is something that we've already seen. I don't know who said this, but quote somebody. This is for me. That person is, when they're imaginary, I visualize their setting. So it helps me to draft a personality or a persona through time or place. I think they play a very important role in my designs. I imagine where, at what time of the day, let's say a gala is happening. There are people going to be arriving, let's say with or without masks. The men are suited, the women are dressed.
I love that. So it's quite a detailed imagination of a scene.
Yeah, it essentially is. And that helps me draw down to the elements. Right? I'm imagining light. I'm imagining chandeliers or not. I'm imagining a ballroom or not. Could be just friends going out with each other for a round of drinks. What would they be wearing? In those.
What do they want to convey? How do they want to feel?
It could be anything, quite literally. And I'll tell you how the influence comes into the picture. That is the most fascinating bit. I could be having dinner at one of my favorite places, and across the table there would be another table where people are sitting and interacting, and I'm not usually eavesdropping, but let's say it that way. But I'm having a meal on my own in a restaurant. That helps me sort of understand the original characters of people. So this is the real world around me. Quite literally. It doesn't get any more real than that.
I think you and I, not today, but previously we talked a little bit about empathy and how important empathy comes into the picture for creativity and luxury, actually. And I think that you're touching on that now, is that curiosity for others, curiosity for their experiences, curiosity for in that sort of using empathy and curiosity in conjunction, I think is quite key. It's quite key to relating to other people and to learning new things, which is how we expand. And I think that perhaps that's another element that is important to me in the definition of luxury and jewelry. It's that feeling of expansion, so you feel like you're growing as a person, owning or collecting or wearing that piece, so it's expanding your world. And I think that again we can talk about art, interior design, and even travel, or what we do and what we surround ourselves with is that element of expanding, nourishing and expanding yourself. I think is it is quite an important part of the story, the experience. So obviously, if you're listening, if you're kind of having this vision, this imagination, thinking of particular scene, that in a way that is part of that, expanding those expanding this conversation, expanding those experiences with the pieces you create.
Yeah. No, quite literally. So, by the means of this particular extent of a conversation that we've stumbled upon, I have, in a way, defined my my luxury client of 2025. It is literally anybody who's at one of these places that I imagine are delivering luxury, and sort of for me to delve into their lives is by the means of being in the same place, sort of experience their lives, to be able to understand what they might expect out of me. Which brings me back to the question, which was, what is your definition of a luxury client?
So I'm going to talk about my definition of just my client. A lot of what I do and a lot of what actually drove Ethos of London at the beginning, obviously I've talked about the curation and the artistry, but one aspect, really, really key aspect I haven't spoken about is women and femininity and sort of celebrating women in the world and women's voices in particular. I've talked about owning your voice, expressing your voice, but let's put that in the context of women's voice and celebrating women's voice. So that's definitely was part of the reason I set up Ethos of London, which is for me what jewelry does and can do. So the client effectively is, a woman who has learned to own her voice, who wants to share her voice, and is authentic to herself and unapologetic about being who she is, whoever she wants to be, whoever that is for her. So it's really a woman who owns herself, owns her voice, and has has joy and pleasure and fun expressing herself and just being herself in the world, owning that space, owning her space. So that is my client, that is the luxury client for me. So there's an element of sensitivity to art and creativity for certain, and I think also with that I would like to encourage women to celebrate themselves more. It's not always up to everybody else to do it. I think we have to do that for ourselves. I think sometimes women don't always give themselves permission to wear something beautiful, to own something beautiful. There's this sort of restriction or hesitation to do that. And so I think I would like to invite every woman out there to celebrate themselves and to give themselves permission to own beauty, to discover and learn about all this different channel of expression that they can enjoy. So, obviously, there is definitely a space for gifting and in jewelry and for partner or for children, and all of this are also beautiful, beautiful ways of sharing and expressing. Care and family ties. So my ideal client is a woman who owns her voice, who wants to have fun with her life, and who's happy to own her space. And how does the luxury comes into it? That is luxury.
To all the wonderful women out there who are sort of about their own voice, I think that was such a good call. That was so on brand for Ethos of London. And I've been seeing this in action for the last few years that we've been working together with your platform. How you interact with your set of clients is something that makes this whole process is such an understated word, that makes this process of delivering their desire to them to celebrate their own voice be such an important thing, be so valuable in terms of what they actually get their hands on at the end of the day. It's always more than what you're really taking in a bag. There's
Of course, yeah.
the empty space in the bag. You could use all of these things, which I really like that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Which sort of brings me to the next point. And I thought we would never be talking about this, given the time that we have for this chat. What do you think is the importance of branding your platform in sort of connecting with people in today's time?
Well, what is branding? Branding is communication. So how important is it? It's absolutely crucial. Communication is the way we understand each other. So, it's about having just a clear message. We're talking about voice. That's what branding is. It's having an identity for the company, for the goals that we have, for the value that we stand for. That is branding. So for me, it's key. Yeah, which is definitely something. I mean, I would classify myself as an entrepreneur. So everything is always in the making, in progress. I could have a sign on the door, in progress. So yeah, branding is absolutely key. Yeah.
Well, I have to say that both of us have become significantly a part of branding process through workshops at Balarience.
Yeah.
And it played a pivotal role in also me understanding and re-empathizing with myself. To what extent do you think that the super valuable process of understanding a client sort of played in your branding? That you've done your latest branding, I believe, at Balarience.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to be candid. I think a lot of it actually comes from me. A lot of it is, a lot of this is my own personal life experience, my own challenges, my own discovery, my own understanding of the world that I live in. And, being a woman myself, and empathy, it's obviously we all have completely individual journey, with motherhood or with careers or, every woman has a different journey, individual journey to them. And that's how every woman has an individual journey particular to them. But I guess, you can definitely have empathy for and relate to other people's story, having gone through your own experiences yourself. So, I guess Ethos of London is really my way of putting my voice out in the world, to kind of address some of the things that I'm observing around me, the way that people shop, so men and women, the way that people buy jewelry, the way that people express or don't express themselves, the authorization and permission they give themselves to break the code or not break the code, to conform versus experiment, etc. So I guess, obviously, I've lived in London for 20 plus years and I've traveled, and so definitely been exposed to different culture and sort of very international environment. And I think I can say that that's no matter where you come from in the world, this what I've just said applies across the board. There's always that conflict between, not that conflict, but that sort of tension between conforming to kind of being a bit more experimentative and affirming. I think affirming and conforming are the two sort of tension points that people have in their life. So, so I think, for me, creativity is that sort of outlet. So jewelry, art are the sort of outlet where you can find your space between the two.
That's really important for, I think, everybody who's thinking from the perspective of sort of delivering either a curated set of products or art or anything, or for a maker who's actually planning to make something. I think that's really valuable information, which brings me to a sort of streamlined aspect, which sort of details out the importance of visibility. We've spoken about how one creates. We've spoken about what they should be thinking about when they're creating. We've spoken about how one selects, or, we've also sort of touched base on who is it that we're doing it for. But then the most crucial element, I think, of what we've discussed already, I think we've done the academia. discussion. I think the real world is so much more about visibility and you can create anything on this planet, and if you're not visible, you're lost. So what do you think is the importance of visibility, and how would you recommend?
You mean lost in terms of as a business, or just as an individual?
As an more than a business, actually, because I think the individual is bigger than a business.
Yeah.
I think just from both perspectives, I think it would come down.
I think visibility gives you feedback. So I think when you said if you're not visible, you're lost, and I guess yes, because obviously if you're not visible, you don't have that dynamic interaction. So, I think, that sort of visibility gives you that interaction, which kind of tells you how to grow. It goes back to the relationship with the clients. They sort of feed into what you do and vice versa. So, it's a constant evolution. So visibility, brings communication, brings feedback, brings evolution. So on that perspective, it's important. On a business perspective, again, it's obviously key. You want people to understand what you do and see your work. So how do you see visibility for your brand? What does that mean for you? Because I know actually you have more of an ethos around. It is a balance again, right? Between you don't want overexposure. Sorry, that's a big word, overexposure and visibility. But I think because you have a very reserve approach is not the way, but a sort of more selective approach. So you haven't always wanted visibility, I feel. Am I correct in thinking that? Or
I think you are, and that also dwells from the fact that I've always tried to be I don't know the right word for this, the person who is out there and then not. There is a word, doesn't come to my head ever.
Introvert, extrovert.
Something in the middle, that particular thing.
Trendy, not trendy.
No, for me, it's that element of my psychological and emotional being that I personally find it very difficult to become relevant to everybody. And I know for a fact. So I think that also comes out from the fact that I was, when I was creating my own things, when I was writing the stories down for my brand, when I was writing just honest stories about my opinions, I sort of empathized with myself. And I realized that particular voice should only be sent out to people who might be able to understand what I'm talking about. Otherwise, I will lose the importance of having the conversation in the first place.
Do you not think that sort of happens organically, though?
I personally think that there needs to be a certain level of control as a maker, from a maker's perspective, because there are different ways in which one, let's say, for example, this particular piece is my interpretation of the calm at the time of sunset at Marine Drive that I would feel. Now, for somebody else, Marine Drive can be the most chaotic place in the world. It's alarmingly chaotic. It is. There are millions of people, if I'm being honest, that are sitting at a stretch of 5.5 kilometers and just doing anything and everything. It is really chaotic. Somebody's playing the guitar, somebody's singing, somebody's writing, somebody's with their partner, people have come down with their families.
Lively.
It is, somebody's working out, there's police roaming around. There's so much happening. There are vendors selling things. In all of that, what I see as an element is the sea crashing with the tetrapods, which also have another meaning. They're there for a specific reason, all of those things. But for me, the importance of that particular setup is completely getting disconnected from the rest of the city, listening to the waves crash, looking at the sunset, the change in the color of the sky, which is the serenity of it.
Filtering out the noise.
Yeah, for me, the noise doesn't exist. There are cars in the background honking, non-stop buses and all those things, and people yelling, friends laughing. I don't hear any of that when I'm there.
That's wonderful. That's a meditation.
It is for me. That's what I say. I mean,
meditative state. I mean, the creative state definitely
yeah.
comes from the meditative state.
Yeah,
so.
and I'm pretty sure that everybody is not going to resonate with that. There will be people who will say no.
Not everybody has the experience of that, and how, and that's how wonderful it is to have those experiences. They're so going back to precious, they are so precious, right? So yes, you're right. Not everybody relates to that, and I think what you've just described there is really being the presence of the present moment, being in the present moment, being in presence, and that that's again the key to quality of experience, and the more you can be, I believe everybody has the ability to be in that space. Not everybody experiment or desires or do the work towards being in that space, but I think we all have the capacity to be there, right?
No,
So
of course.
But I think what you describe is a particular sensibility to time and to poetry, to nostalgia, to joy as well. This is this sort of this sense of stillness, which is quite elegant and quite refined and quite beautiful, which we can definitely see in your work. So who will relate to that? I'm going back to art. Obviously, I do feel that art and jewelry are so tied together. It is having that sensibility to to kind of emotion and sort of visual translation of those emotions, right? So
I often ask this to people when they say, is jewelry art? I almost rhetorically reply by saying, is it jewelry if it's not art? That's my perception.
Oh, lovely! I love that.
that's my
I'm
perception.
gonna steal that from you.
Please do. It's for everybody out there.
Is it jewelry?
Feel free to dine on that.
Yeah, I want to repeat that. Is jewelry art? Is it jewelry if it's not art?
Yeah,
I love that.
I think that's pretty much the ethos of what I do.
Absolutely.
And it sort of also falls into the rugs as well. And I think I've picked it up from the heritage of what has been passed down to me. Essentially, these are not things that I make up. Sometimes I'm still actually figuring out who am I, and I think a lot of the things that I say out loud dwell from the conversations that I've had at dinner tables, and I'm fortunate to have had those with my late grandfather and my dad, who still inspire a lot of my conversation. So I think there is a huge sense of what heritage and history and upbringing plays in what we bring out to the world and how we perceive, again, value. I'm trying to just summarize the whole logistics of what we've discussed. And in that, I think there also does come up a question about, and it's super important, I think it needs talking about. It is about passing on. What my generations before me passed down to me was craft, heritage, knowledge, faith, trust, ethics, and all of those things. And the people, quite literally, all of the people who enable what I am doing right now, I inherit that. And when I talk about these things, these objects, the rugs, the wool, the silk, the library back in India, all of this is essentially bigger than just material. And I think the real sense of heirloom sort of comes into conversation from there. I'm not sure if heirloom would be the right word, but it's something.
Yeah, contemporary heirloom is a word that I like to use, because heirloom has the connotation of slightly old, and obviously when you contrast with contemporary heirloom, it describes pieces of today. And so this is very much what Ethos of London is about, contemporary heirloom. Yeah.
I think it's so super important. I don't know how you have this conversation with your clients, but personally for me, when people talk about getting a jewel piece made and all those things, and it's not I don't know the right word. You are spending a lot of hard-earned money when you're taking some of these things back home. You definitely must seek value. in these things. And I think for me, when people are asking me about the jewelry that they're buying, we're essentially not just talking about my personal story and the importance of value, the listed value of a diamond and all of those things. It's much more than that. I think it's about what they are going to pass down to their children.
And I think that's a really important point as well, because with Ethos of London, what I aim to encourage is the notion of collection and collectible, and that's definitely coming from my sort of contemporary art background. But what I like about a collection, it's well, first of all, it's personal to you because it's how you put things together. Obviously, one jewel can be unique, and so it carries its own cultural values, and that in itself is a legacy. But I think a legacy usually goes along with a body of work, and the reason for that is that it's your own unique way of putting things together. So collecting is the addition of one piece of jewelry plus another, or one piece of art. So is the collection, is the grouping of object that makes the collection. And whilst each object, maybe somebody else, let's just say it's not a unique piece of jewelry, maybe it's been made, maybe there's 100 pieces of that ring, right? But if it's part of a collection, it's still become part of a very unique story that you've created. So I think what you've just mentioned about being much more than just the value of the diamond and the preciousness of the material, it's about what you bring home with you is a story and a legacy. I think that's true of one object, and it's definitely true in the context of creating a collection of and having collectible pieces. It's creating that cultural legacy through each object and the sort of the collection as a whole. So it's really the narrative of the legacy of that sort of the embedded message within the pieces. And obviously we're here now, it's contemporary, but in 200 years time or 300 years time, there's going to be so much into those pieces that we can't even see right now what they're going to say about today. Who knows? I mean, especially with all the technology and the advancement happening, what would the world look like in 250 years? I don't know. We might not have those, we might not have access to the same things. It might be many different ways. So we have to also realize that when I speak of legacy, you never really know what legacy you're creating. You have the intention, but then the legacy that will just create itself.
Of course.
So I think, and I definitely think that, handmade pieces, which is obviously all of your collection are handmade by, in Mumbai and by very skilled craftsmen, generation passes on generation, the expertise is passed on from generation to generation. All of those elements that makes an object alive, so to speak. It's alive by people's hand, by people's touch, and by your creative vision. All of those elements, will become rarer and are likely to become rarer and rarer and rarer. So which makes everything even more precious in the end. Yeah.
Of course. I do have it's not scripted, but while you were talking, I was actually iterating this in my mind over and over again. I think this is a very important giveaway that I have for this particular conversation. As somebody who has learned a great deal from and this is not just me. It's literally everybody. We are brought up by our parents. Now imagine today's world. If somebody is a buyer of a certain product, let's say for example, somebody comes down, they tell me these. Let's say they like these emeralds, right?
Cabochon.
They're cabochon emeralds. And they're a particular shape. They are. Now somebody comes and they pick them up, and that client and I has had a very good conversation about what this means to them, and. They bring their child up just the way their parents brought them up. Essentially, technology, I think, is it's fantastic, but it's daft when it comes to being emotionally expressive, and it cannot be. It's not designed to be emotionally intelligent. It is the most intelligent thing that we have created as humans, but we have created it. So
you're talking about AI.
Parented. Yeah, I'm talking about all of these things. I'm basically saying that we as designers and makers of technology, humans, have informed something. And
Absolutely,
I think our strongest hold is that we can converse language technically, and we can pass on information from one person to the other. They have a saying that back in where I come from, that a mother can make their child anything. And I strongly believe that sort of plays a big role.
Even with the rebellious years.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's usually up to. That's how I think that. I'm fortunate to have been brought up that way, perhaps. But I have been given elements about life through my previous generation's experiences.
Yeah. And I also think that we sort of have, well, I certainly feel that we sort of have a duty to do that throughout our life. Even though obviously our education, our parents give us this incredible grounding and start in life, I think we can develop, and we're constantly evolving and learning.
Yeah.
So that's something that's constantly moving within us, and perhaps that's what you mentioned, is this adaptability and kind of evolution that's inherent. That's part of being a human being, right? So, and no, I think technology cannot. I mean, you know what? I'm going to shy away from. I don't know actually what they can and cannot do, is because it does learn. So I don't know.
No, it does, of course.
Who knows?
But what it cannot do is. I hope I'm not wrong, probably 25 years from now.
Yeah.
But what it cannot do as of now is that it cannot inherit these objects that you and I are able to pass on to another generation or inherit from another.
Yeah.
That's something that makes us very much human with objects. And which sort of also helps me summarize, thank you for that, helps me summarize what I was onto here. The fact that I do get this question a lot these days, that, I have this beautiful piece my mother gave to me, and my daughter doesn't like it at all. She wants me to make something out of it. And I often tell them, did you like it as a child? Right? And the answer is usually retrospective, and then suddenly they're like, no. And I said, I know that you did not like it.
Yeah.
And your daughter doesn't like it right now, but she will love it at that particular stage that your mother received it. It is genetic. It's as simple as, your parents would have sort of followed a routine, like, say, going for a run early in the morning. If you try to apply that same thing in your life at, say, a given different period, different time.
Yeah, there is timing. There is timing for appreciation.
If they used to run in the morning and you run in the evening, you're not really doing the same thing to your body.
I think, there's different. There's two different things in what you've just said, because I think you can have. It depends if you want to wear the jewel, or if you want to have it as a family memory. Because as a family memory, correct, you might not appreciate it in your 20s, but maybe in your 40s, it becomes the best thing in your house, right? So that can be a journey, or which is individual to everyone. But I think in terms of wearing, I do feel that that's not so much related to. I think you may not want to wear a piece of jewelry that your mum owned,
but you treasure.
You may want to. Do you not? Are you not? So would you? I'm sure people come and request to have things modernized or tweaked or changed, and you're not keen on doing that.
See, nothing is hideous out there. That's what I have learned. But if somebody comes down to me with a broken piece, it's something that I would love to help them either reconstruct or reimagine.
Yeah.
But I often try to
not touch if it's.
I'm not really educating anybody. I often try to not impose the fact that I am going to create a better piece. I might not. Right, it's as simple as you might like it, but your mother is going to come to me and say, I hate what you've done tonight. So I usually try to
what you're trying to say is you're just trying to stay away from family politics.
Let's not get into that.
I think that's what you're really trying to say here. It's not really about who's wearing what. It's like, you know what, I'm not going to get into the mum-daughter conversation.
No, it's as simple as something that my father passed on to me as a watch. It's inexpensive, but it's something that I treasure. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I love your sense of preservation. Yes.
I wish a lot more people could be like that. Right? But let's not go there. We're gonna cut this out or not. But I think this does bring us to a sort of a pivotal point in this conversation. We've established the two diamonds, we've diverged enough, we've defined a lot, and we've developed, and we've shown people how we've developed this conversation. I think it's essential now that we deliver something of immense value to all the listeners, and we sort of deviate away from just the psychological bits and the family bits that we've touched upon, and we go back into our world of curation and making, make it very simple. I have an interesting question for you, which is something that the team threw at us, and I will have to answer that as well, which is about, very briefly, what if you could just define what a day in the life of a curator is. I know it's it's impromptu as much as it could be. Yeah.
Well, I think the simple answer is there isn't one. Every day looks quite different, mostly depending if I'm in London. So I do, obviously I have family in France, in Paris, so I pretty regularly go back to see them, and then obviously I try to travel as much as I can for the business, whether that's visiting brands or visiting clients. So that's taken me to New York and a few other places, and I hope very soon Mumbai to come and see you. So I think travel, the ebbs and flow of traveling can come in the way of some sort of daily routine. But if I'm in London, a daily routine would be I work from home, so it would entail probably getting up and hitting the gym for an hour of cardio just to set my day. Get out of the house and come back, and a lot of it is laptop work, whether that's looking at the website or doing a lot of reading, not always, sometimes art and jewelry related, looking at what brands are doing, looking at general sort of industry news. But a lot of the reading I do would actually not be about that at all. So being an entrepreneur, I think a big part of that is motivation and healthy mind, body, and spirit. So a lot of that is more looking at people like Eckhart Tolle and Joe Dispenza and a lot of those contemporary thinker and of today. So I do like to spend a couple of hours looking into that. So I would, how do you call that? Personal development.
Yeah, of course.
So I think it's a mixture of calls, emails, a bit of reading and personal development work, some fitness, and then sort of kind of Zoom meeting sometime with clients or with designers. So quite a lot of Zoom going on, and also quite a lot of art visits. So yesterday I was at a big sort of fair in London that focuses on photography. Photo London, yeah. So I spent a day speaking to a few artists and photographer and speaking to them about their work and their practice. So art is very much still part of my weekly life, and informs a lot of what I do. So it's a mixture of all of that. If I'm here in the UK, and sort of having a little meditation on the weather, which I'm always hopeful it's going to improve.
I wasn't expecting that one. it is a part of my day as well. I think it's a good sort of starting point, because I wake up to technology and I ask Siri, what's the weather like today, which it sometimes fails to indicate and starts telling me various things from the internet and I don't want to know them.
Wonderful.
Which my day usually begins with trying to anticipate what am I going to wear in this fantastically set up, almost fictional weather-wise city, London. And it's, I mean, more than that, I think I have to start in my day. My day really has to start with India, so I have to keep up with 2 time zones. I think it's every maker otherwise as well who's not sort of where they are making their things all the time. So I need to stay in touch with my process. The greatest thing that happens to me is that I wake up to phenomenal assortment of gemstones, which I'm fortunate to have friends in the trade who've been generational in their businesses as well. I mean, their families have been doing this for the longest time is what I'm trying to say. So they have their hands on things almost every day, and these are most remarkable gemstones. So I wake up to photographs of that. And if it's something that's
so selecting gems that you want to acquire.
Sometimes just.
I've got a feeling we might end up this conversation with me with a request where I'm going to want to switch my schedule with you.
Well,
especially if it involves
it gets more fascinating, and then we'll at the end of the day we'll see if you still want to trade.
Okay.
Because I love the whole exercise and talking to family and reading, so I want to trade that. But
self-development, reading, art,
the grass
and
is greener.
fitness.
But no, I think essentially it's that beautiful thing that happens in the morning. But in the background of that is various phone calls that are sort of buzzing on my India number about stones that were supposed to be cut in a certain way and have not been.
Right.
Or my client saying, "Hey,
how would you deal with that? Because once it's cut, the only way to change that is to cut it again." So,
well, it's painful.
So effectively reducing the size of the
So
gem,
with the kind of things that we do, which is art jewelry, essentially, it's so important to tell people that we, for us, losing carat weights on our stone is literally an everyday practice.
Right.
So a lot of people sometimes will come down and tell you things like, your carat, this and that, blah, blah, blah. You cannot compare it a lot of the times. And there's so much painstaking work that goes into sort of getting our carvings right, to get our sort of stones cut to the right dimension, to taper them, to lose the weight.
So just because I think that's quite interesting. So the cut of the stone, effectively you control the cut in order to influence the light on the color.
Yes, but that is the traditional reasoning of cutting a stone a certain way to have the culettes, which is technically very technical, on the back side, the pavilion of the stone where it goes, the parts that we don't see in jewelry. Where are you positioning that to have the best refractive index for a gemstone?
Yeah.
That's a gemology lesson.
So it's the light refraction. That's why you would recut.
Traditionally, yes. But with what I do otherwise, or any art jeweler in this world would be doing, is they transcend into a reality which is beyond just the technical reformation of a rock. There are times when we cut our stones for a poetic reason. Like, say, for example, this particular piece houses emerald tapers, which are not essentially tapered in the same angles. Now, there have been a lot of permutations that have gone into sort of reaching this particular point where all the different sides of a very simple emerald cut have been cut to precision, to a very, very specific angle by people who've been doing this for generations now.
And that's to actually fit the particular piece, the design, fit the design.
Without doing that, it's not going to be able to communicate what I am actually trying to communicate. I'm using squares to particularly reflect or render a sky. Right, so I need to be doing a few things for it to be sort of translated that way. And
sunset or sunrise?
This one's a sunset.
Sunset.
I mean, you have to be in Bombay to see it. The red and the blue.
We are now.
Yeah, thank you. No, that's actually so fulfilling to hear. But no, it's about that in my day, and then going at all the stakeholders involved to always try and keep the clients happy on a daily basis, keep them sort of constructed and updated on the timelines of where their things are.
And timeline, how long would I mean, I know it's varies widely, but on average, what would the commission timeline would be for you?
It could be 5 days. It could be
5 weeks. It could be 5 months.
Yeah, sometimes even a year.
Yeah.
There are pieces that I've commissioned for myself that I haven't been able to finish even in a year. But let's not go there. It's a troubled nerve. But and that's because of things that you can't realistically control. It's not just a trade. It's also about your things. I'm talking about, let's say, a Zambian emerald. It comes actually from a mine in Zambia. So it needs to be understood that there are so many stakeholders involved. I'm talking about a diamond that comes from Botswana, is cut in Surat, but is owned by somebody I might not know, right? So, and I'm looking for it. So there are so many of those things that fall into picture. Now, I'm blessed with my family in Surat and my uncle and his access and all of those things that I get my hands on these things quickly. Yeah. Sometimes, that's why I said sometimes it could take 5 days.
Yeah, which is also why, on the client perspective, it's the absolute key of working with a brand like Surat Jewels and with yourself is that you have not only the expertise. I mean, just to quickly summarize, obviously you have a workshop of artisan making those pieces, but you yourself can make the pieces as well. So you can do everything from A to Z, which is rare, I think. So, but also important because it informs the design you make and how you make them. But also is the access to the industry and the trade and the expertise that you have. That nobody else really is going to have access to, at least at the speed that you do. And I think it's quite magic. We were talking about diamond just when I arrived. You had this beautiful frame, and I said, "Oh, it's crystals." Like, no, it's diamond. I'm like, only at Yazov there is diamond hang on the wall. And so Surat is effectively the birth, the sort of home tone, the birthplace of diamond. Am I sort of?
It is the home of the world's diamond cutting.
Diamond cutting, yeah.
I cannot be poetic about this. It's very, very.
So it's a big industry. Diamond cutting is a big.
Essentially, 95, if not 99% of the world's diamonds today are being cut. It doesn't matter what form they are, natural or not. They are being cut and polished by hand in this particular city.
Yeah.
And it is the bread and butter of millions of people put together. And we have to respect the fact, and that's precisely also why I decided to, when I was doing the name keeping, I could have just literally signed it off with my own name, dad's name, grandfather's name, or my uncle's name, which works really well from an industrial perspective. I mean, I just have to say Rahulji Saraf in Surat, and my work is done. So that's basically all of the things that happen like that. But I think what's more important than all of that is the coming together of this community of millions of people living everywhere in the world who send their things down to Surat and trust the city to cut them exactly the way they're supposed to be cut, is why I decided to call it Surat Jewels. They are essentially, it is an effort that I am making to give back to the community, which the generations before me have been doing. And I thought, when I'm taking all of these creations to the world stage, and I'm literally performing in the Theatre of Dreams, which is London for the world of jewelry, I must represent this community. Yeah. So it does play a very important role, but we keep fighting, and that's this also takes me back to my
daily routine.
Yes, my daily routine is literally them and me ripping each other apart, just to make someone's dream project come to life.
Yeah,
so
that's always part of it's part of creation, really.
It is, and I'm so thankful to God that I have been given this life, where I'm able to sort of not just visualize, not just be able to make it on my own, but also deliver in actual time what people would want to wear without having to impose anything. I mean, I'm definitely not aiming for what I do to become, a largely collected sort of brand. It's not that. I don't want to. I'm sorry, that's my tech interference. But I don't want to make whatever I do a common collectible. What I'm trying to say is I don't want everybody to have an essential.
You have the desire to keep Surat Jewels as a precious wear brand. It's not a sort of
very personal.
Personable is a.
I think that's and in that effort, I spend my day. That's what I do. I mean, other than that, I do write poetry, which influences a lot of things. I do move around. I walk around the city. My inspiration lies in architecture, so I'm literally always on foot, which also sometimes explains why I have injuries. But no, it doesn't. But I'm always sort of on the foot. I'm sort of clicking pictures and
take
noting
inspiration.
things down.
I think that's similar to me and my relationship with art and visit to galleries and fairs. Apart from the professional background, but it's you have to inspire others. You have to nourish yourself, right? So
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
For me, inspiration is on the street. That's basically, and I leave that as an advice for new minds and fresh makers. Who will definitely take on the torch when I'm ready to hand it over. But no, it's essentially I think it's so important for people to be connected to real life, and I think the best practice that I follow for that is to sort of literally just walk around. Right? Just be looking at what people are doing. What are the tourists interested in? What's happening in Hyde Park?
I think rather than real life, I would say being connected to the diversity of life.
Yes.
Because I like that, and I love the thoughts of Surat Jewels being a personable brand, and that's and that being your priority. Other scale and growth, and I love that, because you definitely do lose that to a degree with scale. Everybody tried to strike that balance between personable and scale. So I love that word, personable.
We have to either coin it or find it. And that said, that being my advice to makers.
So what would be your advice to young generation of maker? What would you look into, into sort of emerging brands or designers?
I think it's about first identifying yourself, and then identifying a sense of sort of desirability for who you are. And I think once that is figured out, if you figure out that there are people out there who want to consume you start creating. And I think the most important thing and the most blatantly flat reply to this is trust the process. But trust me, trust the process. That's super important. And there are things that are out of your control. And it's mythologically correct as well. It's part of my mythology. I mean, there is a very important scripture back in India called the Bhagavad Gita, wherein the transcript sort of talks about the values of life and what one needs to do as human. Right? And it's a conversation between man and human. And I'm sorry that I use the word man here, but it is essentially two men talking. That's why I say the word, not because of any other reason.
What do you mean man and human? Sorry.
Man and God. Human and God conversing with each other. And it's basically a person in a battlefield or a person within their home.
This is the book you're referring to, right?
Yes, the mythological text. They're basically talking about the human is asking God at every step, what do I do next? And the advice is so beautifully captured that one, at the end of the day, understands the actual definition of not karma. I'm not trying to go into that direction, but karma as a Sanskrit word, which translates to activity or action.
Okay.
If I'm not completely...
action, yeah.
So a person's responsibility, or a human's responsibility, or a maker's responsibility, is to stay true to their work and to be doing. The rest is up to God knows what.
I absolutely agree with you, and it's interesting because as a creative, you started your thought process saying, just establish if somebody is interested in what you do, and if so, start doing. So as a curator, I would say this is the slight kind of anxiety, talking in the artist, right? Because as a curator, I would say the opposite. I would say experiment, do what you're inspired to do. Don't worry about what anybody else thinks about it. Do what inspires you, what pleases you, what fills you with joy. And then, through that process, this is where trust the process comes into it. Absolutely. Through that process, find your voice, find your creative outlet, And so I think, for me, what I would, if I had any advice to give to kind of young designers or young jeweler, it's really about refining your artistic vision. And even though that is translating through aesthetic, that comes across through a particular aesthetic. So I think you need to have an aesthetic code that you follow and that you repeat. So 100%. Through repetition you establish a sort of an identity, a creative identity. So develop an aesthetic code that is authentic to you. But that aesthetic code, you can only find it by exploring your the roots, the source of where that's coming from. So the values, the voice, the message, or even just a particular thing that interests you, whether that's a focus on nature or architecture. So I think it's really just don't worry about what everybody else is talking about, wanting, needing. Just focus on you, what feels authentic to you. That would be my advice. With the objective of developing that unique aesthetic code at the end of the process. How do you feel about that in terms of aesthetic coding? Do you feel you have a particular...
Well, I have a very, very strong sense of what my aesthetic is.
But how would you define, in your own word, what does that mean to you? How would you define it?
It is my being, I think. As a designer, I think...
So things sort of emerge from you.
Yeah, I think how you keep your bedside, I think, mostly is your aesthetic. Who do you have there? What do you have there? That's my personal opinion. I could be completely wrong, because the bedside is essentially my bedtime read and also my morning. So I think your aesthetics are pretty much defined, or your sense of being is pretty much defined by the space that you create for yourself to live in. And it's so important to not be following blatant trends and be putting things in your house that people might like. It is so important to have objects around you that are an
inspiration.
I think that impersonate you. If one would walk into the showroom that I have in Marrick Street, they would get a sense of my aesthetic.
Absolutely,
they would understand in a blink of an eye who I am as a person. At least that's how I imagine.
I think that is the power of visual, isn't it? Is that you need visually you can convey an emotion, a sensation, a sort of identity in a blink of an eye, right? It takes quite a few words to describe that, right? And yes, so I absolutely agree. But I think, going back to what I said around find your voice, being true to yourself, experiment, I would say you talked about poetry. So I would say poetry is probably like your sort of DNA and your sort of aesthetic code that infuse all the pieces that you create is poetry.
I'm glad you say that, because one of the poetry that I wrote about the space that we had designed was that I ended up defining the room as a poet's courtroom. It was ecstatic how the definition actually came into existence, but it was through an interaction here and there. And it was quite fruitful, actually, for me, that there was chat about what is valuable and not and all of that. And suddenly I ended up responding to that particular question, which is about what is the value of what you make. And I came back to that question saying, I am not a jeweler. That is my first sort of take on that. And who am I is... after addressing what I'm not, I have to address who I am.
Yes.
Who I am is actually a poet. So I'm a poet who's reciting poetry.
And the jewelry is the medium.
Yes, it's through a medium which is jewelry or rugs, for that matter. There's so my space or my aesthetic is a poet's courtroom. And how is that aesthetic sort of magnified is by going to Jaipur with me. The city that I grew up in, culturally rich in a way that I haven't... I've been to a lot of places. I haven't seen anything come close to that from a cultural depth perspective.
Yeah.
And I have to give back to all of the factors that took me back there. It's super important for me to be able to enable what a poet's courtroom was like in historical Jaipur. That is the architecture, that is the time relevance, that is the generational relevance. And how do I embody that in today, contemporary? That defines my aesthetic quite literally.
That is beautiful. Yeah. So absolutely. I don't think aesthetic code, I don't think it's about having a color coding sheet. It goes way beyond that. It's about your soul. Let's talk. I've mentioned soulful. Surrounding yourself with soulful ways of expression, and it is about your soul, your calling, your spirit. All of those things that are untouchable and ephemeral, and that that we sort of combine, express in those very concrete, beautiful objects. Right. So.
Yeah, it is about, I think, identifying beauty in what you do, quite literally.
And how you do it,
that. Of course. Yeah. I think there's a lot that we've gathered for the audience. This format is without questions, that is for sure. But if anybody has any questions, they can engage and they can ask. And we're very happy to reply as a team.
So what do you have? Ethos of London, you have contact details on the website, so you can... you can contact me on there. It's Valerie@ethosoflondon.com, and then you have details as well on Balarience.
You can find me on Ethos of London.
Yes, you can. Exactly. And then we will have plenty of
of course.
social media and so any question, just get in touch.
And of course, stay tuned with what Flowstate has planned. There's a few episodes that are already in the making, some fantastic conversations coming up. There's a lot of literature we're going to be talking about next time we meet. And in the time being, if there's anything that we can sort of support our audiences with in terms of answering questions that are far more specific to either the concept of curation or the concept of making, or just generally as advice, don't take our advice to your heart. If you fail in what you've tried to do with my advice, please don't hate me, and try and continue doing what you are currently. Because as a very, I don't know if I should name him, Zakir Khan, but he's a phenomenal comedian who's picked up some insane amount of success over the last few years, and he says it very funnily. That's his character. I find it very funny, but he says it, and he about going to Bombay, and he says in Hindi, "Aa jao, ho jata hai." That's what I also believe, and that basically means come, it'll happen. And what he's saying is a lot of people in India actually aspire to either become part of the acting industry, which is quite really big in the name of Indian cinema, which a lot of people outside define as Bollywood. But, well, essentially Indian cinema. And there's so many people across the country that want to become part of that through either vocals, instruments, acting, dance, so many other creative fields that want to come in and become a part of, expression. Quite literally. And he says, I'm a comedian, and well, I came from a very small town and I've done it. So
just do it.
It happens for everybody.
I think this is a really nice note to end on. Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Well, Nike is going to come after us for that. But, or just keep doing something like that.
Just keep doing it.
Just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, I like that. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Namaste, shukriya, dhanyavad. And again, all that means thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.